Alright, now that we have our grid mapped out and we tried our best to enlarge our little square onto our big square, we are now ready to begin coloring in with the oil pastels. Now, no matter what colors you see on your square, I would strongly recommend to use about 3 different versions of those colors. We really want to try to work with some tints and shades with this. So for instance, I'm seeing some of this really light, kind of whitish green in there. I'm going to look for my next lightest green, which is this one here. I can see even some spots that have some yellow and some spots that have some white in there. So for just kind of this kind of greenish circle here, I'll use all these colors together. Even in my red, you know, when we first look at it, we might just see one red. But if we start to look a little bit closer, we can see a little bit of darker red on the edges there. So even in my oil pastels, I have 2 different reds. So I'm going to try to use these 2 reds and then maybe even get a little bit of black on it to get those really dark spots. So I really want to encourage you to always be working with about 2 to 3 or maybe even more colors. Now, I would also recommend, if you do have some white areas, to try your best to either work around those or maybe even color those in first, because it's a little bit harder to put the white on top of it afterwards. Now remember, the goal when we were doing the drawing part was to do these grid lines very lightly, so that way it doesn't show up when we do the oil pastels. So I will show you a finished one that I'm working on in a little bit here, but you'll just kind of have to try to ignore these grid lines for right now. Okay? Now, when you're working with your colors, you want to work light to dark. So I'm even going to go in here and add a little bit of the white on here right now in some of those spots. And then I'll go to my next lighter green. And I'm just trying to put this color on, and then I will work with the Q-tips and my fingers and maybe tissue paper to kind of smear and blend them together a little bit. But I can see a lot of this color in here, so I'm going to go ahead and spread that around most of it. Okay, then I go back to my next green, put a little bit of this in here and there and here. We have to remember that with oil pastels, sometimes we have to work in layers. Sometimes this first round of color is just going to fill in all the white spots. And when I blend them together, sometimes I lose some of the color, so I may need to go back in with a second layer. Now I can see up in the corners of my little square here that there is some darker greens too. So I'm going to use this next green I found to create some of that. Okay, and then find what you prefer to do, find your preferred method. I personally like to use my fingers just because I feel like I have a little more control of what's happening. But you may prefer the Q-tip or the tissue paper, but we want to just blend and push this color into the rest of the white spaces I missed. And you need to be careful because if you push down too hard, you're going to just smear it all away. But you can see it gets a lot lighter after doing that. So now that I've got my first little layer on there, I want to go back in and kind of apply a little bit more in each area. This will make it stand out even more. Okay, but you can see it takes time. All of these squares are going to require lots of different tints and shades of our colors, and it will require you to go back and forth and add a couple layers. But if we really take that time and challenge ourselves to look at all of those different colors and lines, I think it's going to really make something special when it all comes together. Alright, I can just see a little bit of white areas that I'm going to try to go over with my white now to finish it off. Alright, but there you have it. You can see how mine's coming along just in this one area here. I'll do the same process in all the other spots too, making sure I use as many different tints and shades of each color until I get it all filled up. When you do finish, come show me and we'll look at how you matched your colors together. Here is how mine turned out on my finished one. So you can see it looks very similar to my little mini square there. That is our goal. Take your time, have fun, and see what you can do.